Hello and welcome to the Understanding Narcissists YouTube channel. Thank you for joining me. This is yet again another question I've been getting, and I haven't really found a sufficient answer to the question because there are some things that arise naturally within the question and it becomes necessarily thorny. So let's just get into it and see why that is. The question has to do with narcissists and psychopaths and to what extent they overlap, and more specifically whether narcissists are psychopaths and what can be learned or rather extrapolated from the two conditions. And that's the first thing to point out, which I've seen instances where psychopathy is classified as a disorder, and then I've seen instances where it's simply a trait or a condition. Now it sounds like those are pretty much the same things, like traits and conditions and things, but there's some differences that need to be taken into account. The major one being that narcissism, it is very possible that it isn't a congenital defect. That is, there may not be certain traits people are born with that make them more suitable to develop narcissism. Whereas the current theory for psychopathy is that it can be simply an effect you're born with. You just do not feel that much empathy. Whatever that's supposed to mean. Just the observed effect, that observed commonality. Now, it could be that they are related, that the same things that make for a psychopath make for a narcissist or contribute to narcissism. It's just that you tweak the conditions somewhat, and that's how they turn out, given their upbringing, given what they're exposed to, yada yada. Then the question becomes, well, to what extent are narcissists psychopaths? Because, as you've seen in my definition, the difference between the two is kind of hard to tell. Almost like narcissism encapsulates psychopathy to some extent, at least because they don't feel empathy. They don't much care for you or myself. And so the natural conclusion must be that there has to be some element of psychopathy in their nature. And I would agree with that with a caveat. And that is, narcissists have immense empathy for themselves. They feel all kinds of empathy for themselves. My only explanation is that it's because they do have some empathy, but it's in a very infantile stage. So they have self-concern. But everybody else, well, who cares? It's not really their problem. They do not feel empathy for others. How big of a difference that really is, I don't know. I'm not really sure what it means in the big picture, though it does seem to be a kind of noticeable difference. If that's the case, there must be some other elements of narcissism that differ greatly from psychopathy. Just given how I approach the subject of narcissism, if you watch these videos, you'll notice that there is a world of difference. There's all kinds of conditions and constraints on narcissists, other things going on, that are entirely different from someone who just lacks empathy. And that kind of comes to another question I get, which is, well, wait a minute. How do we know they're narcissists and not psychopaths? Or how do we know that they're narcissists and not just jerks? And that is because their behavior adheres to, or is dictated by, in my opinion, a pattern, a regime, some kind of dysfunctional order that drives them and compels them to do these things. That pattern is what I call narcissism. That pattern, it's also related to what I believe is driving them how they feel. So there's the exterior stuff that I'm always talking about, the behaviors, the activities, yada yada. And then there's the interior stuff, this of what they're feeling. Now I have to be careful when I start talking about what they're feeling, because you can't really tell anybody what they feel or what they believe. You don't really know for certain. So I have to kind of triangulate, I have to ascertain within their own system of reasoning. Now, in my opinion, that does happen to work because there's so many contradictions where you can kind of pinpoint what they're actually doing because they're not telling the truth. And just by the fact and virtue for us that they're not telling the truth, you can figure out how they're really feeling and what they're really doing with a good degree of accuracy and consistency. Because like I said, it's a dysfunctional pattern. They do it again and again and again. They can't acknowledge it. They can't stop it. And even within their own disorder and experience, there are so many things, so many layers between their perception and what's actually going on. So they're incapable of recognizing it. And therein lies yet another difference between narcissists and psychopaths. I think the evidence is plentiful that plenty of psychopaths can realize they're different from other people and acknowledge that they're psychopaths. Many psychopaths can be very manipulative. They can do things similar to a narcissist, but all those constraints, all the elements that I'm talking about, they're just not present. Psychopaths can actually accomplish things. They can get somewhere in life. In a conventional sense, I'm not saying they can create a loving family and share that love with others and all that kind of thing, but I am saying that in a conventional sense, they can have very successful careers. They can be high-powered people. They maybe desire and yearn for power. And they're actually going to be able to accomplish it as opposed to narcissists who, in my opinion, simply cannot. They are prevented from accomplishing anything by themselves. They simply can't do it. They're going to need somebody else to prop them up just to function. They are simply incapable, that infantile state, that stunted state. So are they completely different? Yeah, I think so. I can't find a lot of overlap between the two where there's a lot of internal consistency. That is, the origins seem to be different, just in the fact that I'm not sure that narcissists are born. I think they're mostly, if not entirely, made. Could be wrong, which is fine, but I that's what I'm leaning towards as of this moment. Psychopaths, not so much the case. It is something you can be born with. It's just a low empathetic response. So they're different in their origins, I think, and how they develop over time. And when shown against a narcissist, a psychopath is comparatively simple. You don't have the same dependence. You don't have the illusion. You don't have all these things that have to be going on for a narcissist to function. I don't think they're as compartmentalized. You don't have to have as much mental disorder and disorganization as a narcissist has to have in order to live, in order to function. I'm not saying one is better than the other. I think psychopaths can probably live much more functional lives. Because remember, just the lack of empathy, you always take it as a bad thing. And if you feel empathy, yeah, it's easy to perceive it as a bad thing. But some of those people can be quite extraordinary at doing things that empathetic people have trouble doing. It doesn't always have to be bad. Last I checked, the basic theory was that it depended on their upbringing, and so a psychopath can be good when they're brought up to do good things, and very beneficial to society where they're able to do things that a lot of us, or more empathetic people, can't bring ourselves to do. Just maybe dangerous, very intimidating type stuff. Their origins are likely different. Their behavior is almost certainly different, though there is a degree to which narcissism does encapsulate psychopathy. Or I'll say at least some conditions where, yeah, effectively a narcissist doesn't care about you at all. But the dynamic and the behavior and the outlook is a lot different from a psychopath, because they are dependent and they do have bad feelings and things that drive their behavior, and they don't have any mechanisms to cope with it. Whereas if you're going to call them psychopaths, when it comes to you, I guess they are effectively psychopaths because they will hurt you. But they do have empathy, at least for themselves. And their growth over time is almost certainly different, because narcissists don't grow, they don't change. I guess the same could be said for psychopaths. However, psychopaths are not limited and restricted in the same way narcissists are. They don't have those same limiting factors. Because remember, a narcissist is really trying to combat themselves, to keep all of that stuff from coming out. To a point. They've got to hide that from themselves. They've got to do all those terrible things. And they are so engaged with the minute things in life, maintaining their control. In the tiniest sense, they just do not have the vision, the ambition, the drive to really do anything substantial. Whereas with a psychopath, you're talking about somebody who just doesn't have empathy. And that can work out for better or worse. From a mainstream point of view, it's often viewed as a negative thing. You be the judge. Thank you for watching this video. I hope you liked it. Like it below if you do. Share it with somebody you think might benefit from it. Comment in the comment section below. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next episode. Bye.